There are wild plants growing right in your neighborhood that are packed with the exact minerals and signaling compounds your bones need to stay strong. You have pulled it out with your bare hands, you have mowed over it, and you have paid someone to poison it, all without knowing that what you ripped from the ground contained more usable calcium than the supplement sitting in your medicine cabinet. But at the end of this video, you will know all 5 of these plants and how to grow them in one garden patch. After age 35, something changes inside your skeleton that nobody explains to you. Your body begins breaking down bone faster than it can rebuild it. This is not a sudden event. It is a slow, quiet process that unfolds across decades without any symptoms at all. No pain, no warning signs, no signal from your doctor, just a gradual weakening that nobody feels until something snaps. Right now, roughly 44 million Americans have either osteoporosis or dangerously low bone density. Every year, more than 1.5 million fractures happen in the United States directly because of weakened bones. Vertebrae in the spine compressing and collapsing under body weight that healthy bone could handle without effort. The medical costs from these fractures exceed $20 billion annually. And behind every one of those numbers is a real person. A grandmother who fell in her kitchen in Memphis, a retired teacher who tripped on the porch steps in Milwaukee, a man who sneezed hard enough to crack a rib because his skeleton had been silently hollowing out for 20 years and nobody ever thought to mention it. When a doctor finally identifies the problem, the response is almost always the same. Take a calcium supplement, maybe a prescription medication, maybe a suggestion to drink more milk. The assumption built into the entire medical system is simple. Bone equals calcium. Calcium equals a pill. Swallow the pill and the problem is solved. But here is what that conversation almost never includes. Your bones are not calcium statues. They are living tissue, a dense collagen framework reinforced with minerals and maintained by constant chemical signaling. Calcium is one input, just one. Healthy bone formation also requires silicon to build the collagen scaffold that gives bone its flexibility. It requires vitamin K to direct calcium into bone tissue instead of letting it deposit in artery walls. It requires boron to regulate calcium metabolism. It requires magnesium to activate the vitamin D that makes absorption possible. And it requires specific plant compounds that signal bone-building cells to actually do their work. A calcium pill addresses one variable out of at least 6. The calcium supplement industry is now worth billions of dollars a year, and it has a problem it does not want you to understand. Walk into any pharmacy in Dallas or Denver or Detroit, and you will see an entire shelf section devoted to calcium. Tablets, chewables, gummies, calcium citrate, calcium carbonate, each label promising to protect your bones and keep your skeleton strong. But here is the detail those labels will never explain. When you swallow a standard calcium supplement, your body absorbs roughly 25 to 35% of what is in that tablet. The rest passes straight through you unused. The label says 1,000 milligrams. Your bones might see 250. The rest is expensive waste. And the most common, cheapest form is calcium carbonate, which requires strong stomach acid just to break down. Anyone over 50 with naturally declining acid production absorbs even less. The absorption problem is not even the biggest concern. Something far more troubling has been sitting in the research for over a decade. When you swallow a calcium pill, your blood calcium levels spike rapidly. That sudden surge does not happen when calcium arrives from food. Food delivers calcium slowly alongside protein and fat and fiber that buffer the absorption. The pill dumps it all at once. Some large-scale clinical studies suggest that sudden spikes in blood calcium from heavy supplementation might contribute to calcification in artery walls. While the link to cardiovascular risks is still heavily debated among doctors, we do know that excess calcium pills can increase the risk of kidney stones. The pill designed to protect your bones may be quietly threatening your heart and your kidneys. Meanwhile, dietary calcium from real food sources does not carry these same risks. The food form protects. The pill form may harm. Now consider the business model underneath all of it. The bottle runs out every 30 days. You buy another one. 30 more days, another bottle. The subscription never ends because the product is designed to be consumed and repurchased forever. A plant that grows in your yard and returns every year on its own cannot generate monthly revenue. It cannot sustain a subscription, it cannot be patented or licensed or sold in a blister pack. And that is precisely why you have never been told about it. There are 5 plants. Each one builds bone through a pathway that no calcium pill can replicate. The first one has been doing it for 300 million years. It was here before the dinosaurs even existed, and it is growing behind your shed right now. 300 million years ago, long before any dinosaur walked the earth, massive forests of giant segmented plants towered 40 feet into the sky across swampy lowlands that would eventually become the coal deposits of Pennsylvania and West Virginia. But the descendant of those prehistoric giants survived. It is still here today, growing 3 feet tall in wet ditches and along stream banks and in the neglected corners of backyards from Ontario to Oregon. You have probably seen it without knowing what it was. Thin, hollow, segmented stems that look like tiny bamboo stalks rising from moist ground near a downspout or along a creek. No flowers, no broad leaves, just those strange, jointed green tubes pushing up along fence lines and drainage channels every spring. This is horsetail. Botanists call it Equisetum arvens. It has survived every mass extinction event in the history of life on this planet. There is a reason it refused to disappear. Up to 25% of horsetail's ash content can be silica, making it one of the most silica-rich plants in the botanical world. Silica is the missing piece that the calcium industry never discusses. Your bones are not solid blocks of calcium. They are built on a framework of collagen, a flexible protein mesh that gives bone its ability to bend slightly under stress without snapping. Silicon is what your body uses to manufacture that collagen scaffold. Without it, calcium has nowhere to attach. Pouring more calcium into a body that lacks silicon is like pouring water into a bucket with no bottom. You can keep pouring, nothing stays. Silicon plays a direct role in bone formation. It improves the density and structural integrity of bone tissue by enhancing collagen production and improving how the body actually utilizes calcium. Studies have also found that horsetail compounds appear to inhibit the cells that dissolve bone, while simultaneously stimulating the cells that build new bone. It works on both sides of the equation at once. The ancients understood this long before modern science caught up. Roman soldiers used horsetail stems to scrub and polish their metal armor because the silica content made it a natural abrasive. Medieval healers across England and Germany prescribed horsetail tea for broken bones and joint pain. The same mineral that polished metal was quietly strengthening the bones of everyone who drank it as tea for centuries. They did not know the chemistry, they knew the result. Growing horsetail requires almost nothing from you. It thrives in wet, partially shaded ground near the edges of yards, along downspouts, and in any low spot where water tends to collect. Once established, it spreads by underground rhizomes and returns permanently each spring with no replanting required. Harvest the green stems in late spring and early summer. Dry them thoroughly and brew as a strong tea. Simmer the dried stems for at least 20 minutes because a quick steep is not enough to pull the silicon out of those tough segmented walls. That slow simmering extracts the mineral into the water where your body can absorb it. One established patch provides decades of harvests without you lifting a finger. Horsetail builds the collagen scaffold your bones need. But the next plant does something horsetail cannot. It actively accelerates the healing of bone that is already broken. People across Europe called it knit bone for 2,000 years, and the name tells you everything you need to know. The name comfrey comes from the Latin confera, which means to knit together. In Old English, they called it knit bone. In German, the name bien well translates directly to bone well, meaning the thing that makes bones grow together. Every language that encountered this plant across every centuries named it the same thing. That is not marketing. That is 2,000 years of people watching broken bones heal faster when this plant was applied, and giving it a name that described exactly what their own eyes observed. In ancient Rome, around the 1st century, the scholar Pliny documented comfrey in his Encyclopedia of Natural History. He described using it for bruises and sprains and claimed it ensured rapid healing of wounds. 500 years later, the Greek physician Dioscorides recorded similar uses. In medieval Germany, the famous healer Hildegard von Bingen documented comfrey for bone injuries at her Benedictine monastery. On battlefields across England and France, surgeons packed comfrey poultices directly against broken limbs. For century after century, from the Mediterranean coast to the British countryside, this plant was standard medicine for anyone with a fracture. Every healer in Europe knew the name knit bone and what it could do. The compound responsible is called allantoin. Comfrey roots and leaves contain high concentrations of allantoin, which stimulates osteoblasts, the cells in your body that build new bone tissue. It accelerates the formation of the callus, that hard bridge of new material that forms at a fracture site and knits the broken ends together. Comfrey also contains rosmarinic acid, a potent anti-inflammatory compound. One study found that comfrey ointment performed comparably to a common pharmaceutical anti-inflammatory gel for joint and muscle pain. A garden plant matching a factory drug. Now here is an important detail, and this script would not be honest without including it. Comfrey is primarily an external plant. The leaves and roots contain compounds called pyrrolizidine alkaloids that can stress the liver if consumed internally in large quantities over long periods. This is well documented and it matters. German health authorities have officially recognized comfrey preparations specifically for external use on bruises, sprains, and closed injuries. The traditional application was always topical. Poultices laid directly over fracture sites, infused oils massaged into sore joints, compresses wrapped around swollen tissue. This is not a plant you toss into a salad. This is a plant you apply to your body from the outside. Respect that distinction, and comfrey will do exactly what 2,000 years of healers said it would do. Growing comfrey is almost embarrassingly simple. It is a perennial that reaches 3 to 4 feet tall with large, soft, fuzzy leaves and clusters of drooping, bell-shaped flowers in purple and white. It thrives in partial shade and moist soil. Propagation is easiest by root division. Take a section of root from an established plant, bury it a few inches deep in a shaded corner of your yard, and step back. One root cutting establishes a permanent patch that expands on its own year after year. Comfrey also serves double duty in any garden. Its deep taproot mines minerals from the subsoil far below and concentrates them in the leaves above. Chop those leaves and drop them around your other plants as living fertilizer, medicine for your bones and food for your garden, from the same plant growing in the same corner, doing both jobs at once. Horsetail builds the collagen scaffold. Comfrey accelerates repair when bone breaks, but neither one delivers what the next plant delivers: raw, concentrated bone-building minerals in quantities that rival a glass of milk. And the only reason most people never eat it is because it fights back. There is a reason children remember stinging nettle for the rest of their lives. Tiny hollow hairs along the stems and leaves inject formic acid into your skin on contact. Every kid who has ever stumbled barefoot through a nettle patch along a creek bank or behind a backyard shed in Portland or Pittsburgh or rural Vermont remembers the burning welts. That memory stays for decades. But here's what the sting actually is. It is a defense system built by evolution to protect something extraordinary growing inside those leaves. No deer grazes on nettle, no rabbit nibbles it, no careless gardener yanks it without thinking twice. The sting ensures the plant survives undisturbed in dense permanent colonies waiting for the person wearing thick leather gloves who understands the secret hidden behind the pain. Stinging nettle is one of the most mineral-dense wild plants in the entire northern hemisphere. The leaves contain calcium, magnesium, iron, silicon, potassium, manganese, zinc, copper, and chromium. They also carry exceptionally high concentrations of vitamin K, one of the most critical and least discussed bone-building nutrients in existence. Vitamin K directs calcium into bone tissue and keeps it from depositing in the walls of your arteries where it causes damage. Without adequate vitamin K, the calcium you consume may end up in exactly the wrong places. Nettle is also rich in boron, a trace mineral that regulates how your body metabolizes calcium and activates the vitamin D required for proper absorption. A strong herbal infusion made from 1 ounce of dried stinging nettle, steeped overnight, can deliver an impressive amount of highly absorbable dietary calcium. That is comparable to a full glass of milk, from a plant that grows wild in every temperate zone on the planet and costs absolutely nothing. And here is what separates plant minerals from supplement minerals. When calcium, boron, and silicon arrive together in a whole food matrix, wrapped in fiber and natural cofactors, your body recognizes them and absorbs them far more efficiently than isolated compounds compressed into a tablet at a factory. In Nepal, marginalized ethnic communities in the Midwestern hills have eaten stinging nettle as an everyday vegetable for centuries. They call it Sishnu and cook it as a simple green dish with spices and oil. In Germany and Austria, nettle soup is a beloved spring tradition called Brennnesselsoup that families have prepared for generations. Stinging nettle is a perennial. It spreads by seed and underground rhizomes. Tuck a patch into a moist, shady corner of your yard, the kind of neglected spot where nothing else wants to grow, and leave it alone. It needs nothing from you after that. Harvest the young tips in spring wearing thick gloves. 30 seconds in boiling water, and the sting vanishes completely. The plant that hurts you raw becomes one of the most nourishing cooked greens on earth. Blanch it and eat it like spinach with butter and salt. Or dry the leaves and steep them overnight in cool water for a long infusion that extracts maximum mineral content into the liquid. That single patch will expand on its own every spring and keep producing for decades without replanting. Nettle floods your body with the raw minerals that bones demand. But raw minerals are useless if your body cannot direct them to the right place. The next plant does something no mineral supplement on any shelf can do. It sends a signal directly to your skeleton, telling it to stop dissolving, and it does it with a compound that mimics the hormone you lost. Here is a biological reality that affects roughly half the population, and almost nobody explains it clearly. When women reach menopause, estrogen levels drop sharply. Most people think of estrogen as a reproductive hormone and nothing more. But estrogen also regulates bone remodeling. It keeps the cells that dissolve bone in check while supporting the cells that build new bone. When estrogen drops, that balance collapses. The cells that break down bone become hyperactive. The cells that build bone slow down. During the years following menopause, women can lose up to 10% of their dense cortical bone and 25% of the spongy trabecular bone inside their skeleton. The structure is being dismantled faster than it can be rebuilt, and no amount of calcium supplementation addresses the underlying hormonal signal that is driving the destruction. Red clover does. Picture an open meadow in June, anywhere from the hills of County Kerry in Ireland to the rolling pastures of central Vermont. The ground is covered with round, pinkish-purple flower heads buzzing with honeybees in the afternoon sun. This is red clover, Trifolium pratense, a plant so common that most people have walked through fields of it without a second thought. Hidden inside those familiar blossoms is a group of compounds called isoflavones. These are phytoestrogens, plant molecules that can bind to estrogen receptors in human bone tissue. They do not replace estrogen entirely, but they occupy the receptor site just enough to slow the accelerated bone breakdown that menopause triggers. They partially replicate the protective signal that natural estrogen once provided. The brake pedal that menopause released gets gently pressed again. In double-blind clinical trials, researchers have found that the specific phytoestrogens in standardized red clover extracts can significantly slow down bone loss in the lumbar spine of menopausal women compared to a placebo. Same age range, same starting bone density, different outcome. A flower from a meadow held bone density that a sugar pill could not. Red clover has been part of European folk medicine for centuries. Healers brewed it as tea for respiratory complaints, skin conditions, and what they called women's ailments, the old term for menopausal symptoms. Irish and Scottish farming families considered red clover a sign of healthy, fertile soil. Farmers watched their cattle and sheep grow stronger and healthier on pastures rich with clover. The animals were consuming phytoestrogens that supported their hormonal and skeletal health without anyone understanding the mechanism. Nobody knew the science, everybody noticed the result. Growing red clover is as close to effortless as gardening gets. It is a perennial in most climates. It loves full sun and tolerates poor, thin soil without complaint. Scatter seeds across any open ground in spring or fall. Red clover is a legume, which means it fixes nitrogen from the air and deposits it into the earth through its root system. It fertilizes the ground while it grows. Harvest the flower heads when they are fully open and dry them in a warm spot out of direct sunlight. Steep a handful of dried blossoms in hot water for 15 minutes and you have the same tea that farming communities from the Scottish Highlands to the Appalachian foothills brewed for generations. One patch of red clover feeds your bones and enriches your soil at the same time. 4 plants, 4 completely different bone-building pathways. Silicon from horsetail, cell repair from comfrey, raw minerals from nettle, hormonal signaling from red clover. But the 5th plant does something none of the others can. It does not just deliver its own nutrients to your body, it forces your body to absorb more of everything else you eat. And you have spent your entire adult life trying to kill it. Every person watching this has pulled a dandelion out of the ground at some point, sprayed it with herbicide, paid a lawn care company to eradicate it. The American lawn and garden industry collects billions of dollars annually, and a significant portion of that money funds the systematic destruction of a plant containing calcium, magnesium, potassium, iron, vitamin K, vitamin A, and vitamin C in its leaves alone. Every single part of a dandelion is edible. Root, stem, leaf, flower. It is one of the most mineral-dense leafy greens available anywhere on Earth, and we spend fortunes trying to wipe it out. But the mineral content is not even the most remarkable thing about dandelion. What truly sets this plant apart from the other 4 is what is happening underground in that long, stubborn taproot. The root is loaded with a compound called inulin. Inulin is a prebiotic fiber, and it does something that no calcium supplement on any pharmacy shelf in any city can replicate. It fundamentally transforms how your body absorbs calcium. Inulin feeds the beneficial bacteria living in your colon. Those bacteria produce short-chain fatty acids that lower the pH of the gut environment, making calcium ions more soluble and dramatically easier to absorb through the intestinal wall. Inulin also stimulates the growth of new cells along the colon lining, which expands the total surface area available for mineral uptake, and it activates the production of calcium-binding proteins that physically transport calcium molecules across the intestinal barrier into your bloodstream. Research has found that 8 to 10 grams of inulin per day measurably improves calcium absorption and bone mineral density in adolescents, in postmenopausal women, and in adult men. This is not a subtle effect. This is a real measurable improvement in how much calcium actually reaches your bones from every single thing you eat. Now think about what that means for the other 4 plants on this list. Nettle delivers calcium and minerals. Red clover preserves bone density. Horsetail provides the silicon framework. But dandelion root consumed as tea alongside those plants amplifies the absorption of every mineral they carry. Dandelion is the multiplier. It does not just contribute its own nutrients, it opens the door wider for everything else to enter. And there is a second mechanism working at the same time. Dandelion is a classic bitter herb. That sharp, slightly bitter flavor on your tongue when you chew a young dandelion leaf stimulates your body to produce more digestive enzymes and bile. Increased bile flow improves the breakdown of fats and the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins, including vitamin D and vitamin K. Both of those vitamins are essential for calcium metabolism and bone health. Dandelion improves mineral absorption and digestive function simultaneously through two completely separate biological pathways. In Korea, dandelion is called mindulri, and families brew the dried roots into tea that has been part of traditional wellness practice for centuries. In Italy, families forage dandelion greens every spring in the rolling green hills outside Rome and Florence and dress them simply with olive oil and fresh lemon. In the hollows of eastern Kentucky and the mountains of West Virginia, Appalachian families gather dandelion greens each spring as the very first fresh food after long, bitter winters when nothing else was growing yet. In every one of those cultures, dandelion was a valued food and a respected medicine. In the United States, it is classified as a nuisance. The growing instructions for dandelion are almost absurd in their simplicity. Stop killing it. Stop spraying. Stop mowing the flower heads before they seed. Stop paying someone to remove it from your lawn. Dandelion is a perennial with a deep taproot that survives freezing winters and drought and soil and regrows indefinitely from whatever fragment of root remains in the ground. A single bright yellow flower head releases up to 200 seeds, each one carrying its own tiny parachute engineered by millions of years of evolution for maximum wind dispersal across maximum distance. One plant can colonize an entire yard in a single growing season. This plant was designed by nature to be impossible to destroy. Your only job is to stop fighting it and start using it. Harvest young leaves in April when they are tender and barely bitter. Dig roots in October and dry them and roast them slowly for a rich, earthy tea or brew them fresh. Fry the bright yellow flowers into simple fritters with a light batter. The single most nutritious plant in your entire yard has been the one you paid someone else to remove. Now stop for a moment and consider what you have. 5 plants. 5 completely different bone-building pathways working in concert. Horsetail delivers the silicon that builds the collagen scaffold underneath your bone. Comfrey accelerates repair when bone fractures. Nettle provides a complete package of bone minerals from calcium to boron to vitamin K, rivaling anything in a glass of milk. Red clover sends the hormonal signal that slows bone dissolution after menopause. And dandelion multiplies the absorption of everything else. You do not need a farm, you do not need raised beds or expensive soil amendments, you do not even need a large backyard. You need one patch, roughly 6 feet by 8 feet, or a cluster of containers grouped together on a patio or balcony. Plant comfrey in the center where it grows tall and provides structure. Along a moist, shaded edge, establish nettle in its own contained corner where nobody will brush against it accidentally. Place horsetail in a pot or a wet low spot and keep it contained because it spreads aggressively. Scatter red clover seed across any remaining open sunny ground, and dandelion needs no help from you at all. Simply stop removing it from wherever it is already growing. In the first season, you harvest fresh leaves and brew teas from 3 of the 5 plants. By the second year, every plant in the system is established, expanding, and returning on its own without any replanting. Your only ongoing cost is water. Think about what this single garden patch replaces. The calcium supplement on your shelf is covered by nettle and dandelion. The silica capsules from the health food store are replaced by horsetail tea from a pot by the back door. The bone repair ointment is replaced by comfrey poultice from the shaded corner. The isoflavone capsules your doctor mentioned are growing as red clover flowers in the sunny section. The prebiotic gut supplement is dandelion root pulled from the lawn you stopped poisoning. 1 garden, 5 plants, 5 supplement bottles eliminated. The industry sells you 1 mineral at a time, in 1 bottle at a time, on 1 monthly subscription at a time. This small patch delivers all of them at once, every single year, for the price of a few seed packets and a Saturday afternoon in you. Your grandmother probably knew at least one of these plants. Your great-grandmother almost certainly knew several. For thousands of years, across every continent on Earth, people grew their bone medicine instead of buying it. Korean families brewed dandelion root tea after meals. Nepali mountain villages made nettle soup from plants growing wild behind their homes. Medieval monasteries across Germany and France maintained comfrey and nettle gardens for medicine and food and fiber all at the same time. Japanese farmers in the countryside drank horsetail decoctions for bone and joint strength. Irish and Scottish families watched their flocks grow healthier on pastures thick with red clover. None of those cultures had a supplements aisle at a pharmacy. None of them needed one. They had a garden and the knowledge of what grew in it. This knowledge was not lost through any conspiracy. It was lost through economics. A plant that self-seeds generates no repeat revenue. A crop that needs no purchased inputs supports no input industry. What cannot be sold on a monthly subscription cannot be marketed, and what is not marketed simply disappears from public consciousness within 3 generations. 3 generations is exactly how long it took, but the plants did not disappear. Dandelions still crack through every sidewalk in every town in every state. Nettle still stings behind every garden shed and along every stream bank. Horsetail still pushes up from every wet ditch from Maine to California. Red clover still flowers in every unmowed meadow and every neglected roadside. Comfrey still rises quietly in shaded corners where someone's grandmother planted a root cutting decades ago and it just kept growing on its own. The plants were never the problem. The forgetting was the problem. And forgetting, unlike bone loss or soil depletion or crop failure, is entirely reversible. Start with one plant, dandelion. If nothing else, because it will find you whether you invite it or not. Learn to harvest the leaves in April when they are young and tender and barely bitter. Dig a root in October and dry it for tea. Watch what that single plant does across one full year. Then add a second, then a third. By the time you have all 5 established and returning on their own every spring, you will stop seeing a garden. You will start seeing a pharmacy that builds your bones and feeds the bees and replants itself while you sleep. The seeds cost almost nothing. The soil asks only that you leave it alone. The plants ask only that you remember them. They have been waiting in the cracks of the pavement this entire time. And do not forget, if you want to grow what the healthiest people on the planet are growing and start living like them, the Centenarian's Garden has got you covered. Go show them some love.